Today's video is different than what I normally do on this channel. Recently I'd been speaking to a buddy of mine and both of us were worried about the implications of AI and what it means for the future. There's a ton of YouTube slop regarding this topic, how AI is going to take everyone's jobs and how it's basically the future, which, okay, yeah, it probably is the future, but I'd like to see some sort of proof or some kind of simulation or something that can show what kind of impact AI will have. And that's exactly what we do on this channel. We try to find answers to hard questions. So while devising this simulation, I was trying to figure out what this would even be considered. Is it a PDE, an ODE? What kind of system are we using? And being stuck on what I would call this kind of simulation, I had no other choice but to consult LLMs, or maybe speak to one of my math professors. They'd be able to give me an answer. All the LLMs agreed that this would be considered a dynamic system simulation, hence the title of this video. Well, time to explain how the simulation works. To start with, our quote-unquote job market will consist of an array or a container that holds values. 13 values to be specific, of which 8 require a college degree. And just like how we have a distribution for job market, we have a distribution for STEM degrees as well. This particular container will help to determine the number of degrees for a specific field. Originally, the job openings themselves are random, however there is an engine driving the job openings, and that's essentially the entire simulation itself. And given that the US is naturally a low birth rate country, most of our population is actually increased due to immigration. Because of this, 35 to 50% of those immigrants will be searching for jobs, and of those 35 to 50% of job seekers, they will hold degrees. And next, we have one of the more technical parts of the simulation. There are two types of buckets, the seekers and the unemployed. When distributing jobs, we will take individuals from the seekers bucket and from the unemployed bucket, one by one, for each domain. Because of this, certain individuals for their specific degrees won't be able to make it in, and hence they will be moved to the unemployed bucket. Furthermore, before anyone even seeks employment, there is a state variable for AI. This state variable is responsible for reducing jobs, and it varies from job to job. But the jobs that are hit the hardest are specifically computer science, animators, and accounting. Once people seeking for jobs in their field are unsuccessful, they're moved to the unemployed bucket. However, once they're moved to the unemployed bucket, obviously you need a job. You can't go like 1, 2, 3 years without a job. At least in most cases you can't. Hence, they're gonna have to find a job elsewhere, like maybe as an Uber driver, Uber Dash, factory worker, food business, maybe some minimum wage job. And now finally, we're gonna get to the heart of this simulation. At the end of every year, a delta is applied to the AI state variable. To add further complexity and just overall realism to the simulation, it also has a second derivative, or this delta has a delta. And the delta's delta is determined randomly every year between 0 and 1%. Lastly, every 4 years there's something that's applied that's called saturation shift. Essentially, students are now going to start moving towards something that's less AI dominated, and this will depend on which areas are the most AI dominated. So naturally, in this simulation, what you're going to see is you're going to see less students enrolling in CS and accounting over time. Let's suppose a lot of students start enrolling in, say, pharmacy. Well, if pharmacy is too saturated, they're going to start moving away from pharmacy into other areas that are less saturated. As you can see, this is actually a fairly complex system that we're working with. And of course, the numbers that we're going to be seeing, they're not meant to be taken as Bible, but they will definitely be characteristic of certain overarching themes and the effects of AI in the job market in the future. So instead of showing you guys the simulation itself, because all it really is just some output from a while loop, instead I'm going to graph it and we're going to discuss the results. So I'm going to display the information graphically using R. I'm going to be showing two examples. In this first example, we could see job openings ranging anywhere between 3 and 7 million. If you ask me, these are pretty much the ideal conditions of the job market with the inclusion of AI. And even with these ideal conditions, we were seeing unemployment rates hitting as high as 18%. Now, will this necessarily be the case? Maybe, maybe not. I hope not. I hope that this is wrong. But one of the positive things out of this simulation that I've seen so far, as saturation shifts were occurring and students were beginning to go to other jobs like pharmacy, engineering, medical, these different fields, we were beginning to see the job market open up slowly. This means that at some point the job market will stabilize and that it's not all doom and gloom. Not to mention there will likely be other jobs that will come out of AI, mainly AI specialist roles. But also on the more morbid side, as you guys can see, certain jobs are becoming increasingly saturated and have higher rates of unemployment. As you can see here, the AI state factor for CS is almost 40%, meaning that 40% of jobs are taken over by AI and computer science. Despite CS having such a high AI state factor, a lot of the CS students are still able to find employment. Now, are the CS students able to find well-paying jobs? That is the case for some of them, and for others it's not really the case. But the most important takeaway from this is that going forward, a lot of people with degrees will have more options and people without degrees will have less options. Despite holding a degree and currently pursuing my bachelor's degree, I was of the school of thought that you don't necessarily need to have a college degree. And yeah, that's true, you don't necessarily have to, but going into the future, it's going to become a lot more important as you need all the options possible. Which may not come as a surprise to some of you, but to me it was pretty mind-blowing that despite AI dumbing down the education system, getting an education or some sort of certification or accreditation is going to be a lot more important now. And not unusual to see areas less impacted by AI and also significantly less impacted by offshoring are going to have a lot more job opportunities. As you can see in this graph, pharmacy has an almost 0% unemployment rate. Now for this last graph, job openings will range between 1 million and 6 million. Hence, the job market's going to be a little bit more chaotic, and I think this is the more realistic simulation. And looking at this graph, we can immediately tell that the unemployment rates seem much higher. In fact, by the end of the simulation, or year 20, we have an estimated unemployment rate of about 33%. And to give you guys an idea of how insane that is, during the Great Depression, the unemployment rates were 25%. Of course, are the numbers really going to be that high? No one knows. They might be that number, they might even be higher. But hopefully they're going to be a lot lower, that's what we're all hoping for. So what's the silver lining to all of this? Is there any hope? I believe that there is, and one of those potentially coming out to be universal basic income. Because guys, let's be honest, we can't have 33% of the population unemployed. That's just absurd. Likely at some point in the future, the US government would have to step in and charge taxes for the companies that are dominated by AI. This topic can be a video of itself, but personally I'd rather avoid it because there's just a lot of political stuff and I really don't want to get into that. This channel is not meant to be political. Either way, I think we're all going to be okay in the end, because I believe that our government can come up with solutions for difficult problems, as they have in the past. So if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. I'm going to be releasing one of my Mega Man videos soon, and there has been a bit of a change in plans regarding Mega Man, but yeah, it's going to be interesting though. Thank you for watching, hope you guys have a great day.